Hi, this is Mark and welcome to this presentation on DISC. So DISC is a behavioural and personality profiling system used throughout the world, and it helps you understand both your behaviour and that of others, and how we act, communicate, and our emotional responses. So it helps us build rapport, helps us communicate, and it can help us be far more successful in all that we do in our business, career, or personal life. So the DISC system originates from the 1920s research of Dr. William Marsden of the USA, and he's famous for one other thing being the lie detector. And his early work also come from Dr. Carl Jung, who was I think a Swiss psychologist in the 1800s. So this work provides a non-judgmental language of exploring behaviours and personalities. And he found that there were four main primary types of behaviour, these being DISC, influence, steadiness, and compliance, and that's where the name comes from, the D, the I, the S, and the C. So the D is dominance, challenges, how we respond to problems or challenges. I is for influence, how you influence others to your point of view. S is for steadiness, and it's about how you respond to the pace of the environment. And C is conscientious or compliance, and how you respond to rules and procedures set by others. So you can be high or mid or low in any of these four areas. And when you do your profile, that will show you that. So DISC is about the how. It describes how people behave and how we can respond to them to get our needs and their needs met. So it's really good when you can understand your behaviour and profile, and also of other people that you communicate with. So as you will see, the DISC model has been tried and tested since the 1920s, and it's developed from that time. So there is some very slight variations of the DISC personality profiling methods. So it's been used for many, many years. Now, one thing to ensure is that DISC is not about certain things. DISC is not everything. It's a very important part, but there's many other factors. So it's not about a person's intelligence, their values, their skills and experience, or their education and training. So what does learning the DISC language help you with? It helps you gain commitment and cooperation. It promotes appreciation and differences. It helps build effective teams, because people understand that everyone is a little bit different, and people will get on better. It can help resolve and prevent conflict. It'll improve customer service, and it's very, very important in sales, which we're going to cover later. It also helps us manage our time better. So it's a life skill that we all should know about, learn about, practice, use, and get competent at it. So it helps us understand our behaviour and that of others that we have contact with. So it provides an insight to the way we act, we communicate, and the emotional responses that come from that. So you can do an online profile, but this is a quick method to work out what your DISC profile is, or your main or highest DISC profile. So the first question is you ask yourself, or if you're trying to read someone, is this person outgoing or reserved? And then the second question you ask, is this person task focused or is this person people focused? Now sometimes people feel they're a little bit in between, or both, but a good question to ask, are you outgoing or reserved? If you went into a bar or a restaurant or a networking event, a more outgoing person finds it very easy to go up and talk to other people. A reserved person, it takes a little bit harder. They've got to push themselves a little bit more, and they find it a little bit harder. Takes longer to do. So that's the question you should ask. Then the second question for task and people, a good question to ask, if you've got some work to do, are you happy to sit down in your office perhaps, or wherever it may be, and work on that task all day long? Where a people's person finds that really hard to do. They may do it for a while, but then they like to get up and have people contact. So that's the two questions you need to ask yourself. So put this video on pause and write down the answer to those two questions. Just go with the one that you feel is the best for you. So if you asked, said you were outgoing and then and task focus, you're what's called a D. D stands for dominant. We'll come to that in a minute. If you were outgoing and people focused, you're what's called a I, highest in the I. If you did S, people focused and reserved, you're what's called an S for steadiness. And if you answered C, task and reserved, you are what's called a C, also known as compliant. So we'll come to what these mean in a moment. So that's just what you're highest at. You have the whole 4, but one is normally highest. And you can have 2 roughly the same, but one normally is a little bit higher than the other. So normally most people would have a fairly high one, then a mid to high one, then perhaps a below 50%, and then one normally quite low. So another way to look at it, that instead of task focused, people sometimes use the word guarded, instead of people focused open, instead of direct outgoing and reserved. But you still get the D, the C, the S and the I. So here's, for each one, there's sort of a couple of words that can describe that person when they're high in this area. So for dominance, it's director or driver. For influence, it's socializer, expressive. For steadiness, it's relator, amiable. And for conscientious or compliant, it's about thinker and analytical. So they're just a couple of words that describe that person when they're very high in that area. So the high D, or the high dominant, is direct and decisive. They're strong-willed, strong-minded people who like accepting challenges, taking action, getting immediate results, getting on with things, leading people, and those sorts of things. The high I, or influence, is optimistic and outgoing. I's are the people's people who like participating on teams, sharing ideas, energizing, entertaining others, talking to other people, being the life of the party, you might say. The S stands for the steadiness. That's someone who's sympathetic and cooperative. They like working behind the scenes. They're good team members. They perform in a consistent, predictable way. They're good listeners, and they really get on and cooperate and work with other people well. So they're great team members. And the final one, conscientious or compliant. They're very concerned and correct. They're sticklers for quality and like planning ahead. They like it using systems and procedures. They like to be correct, so they'll really check and recheck for accuracy. So they're very good in following procedures. So here's some words to describe each of the 4 quadrants, the D, the I, the S and the C. Perhaps put the video on hold and have a good look at them, and which one ever you're highest on. Most of those words should really, in that area, should really resonate with you. And if you're very low in one area, the words won't resonate. You'll be opposite, really, to those words. You won't feel that they are words that really talk about you at all. So you can, like I've already said, you can be high and low of each of these areas. So for dominance, their approach to problems, if they're high D or high in that area, they like new problems so they can solve them quickly, assertively, actively, and they like to get to the bottom line quickly. So if you're low in the dominance, or D, you like to solve problems in a controlled, organised way, and you think before making those decisions. So if you're high in the I, you like meeting new people in an outgoing, talkative manner. You're gregarious and emotional. And if you're low in the I, that means you meet new people in a quiet, controlled, reserved manner. You're emotionally controlled. Now for the S, or steadiness, if you're high in that area, you prefer a controlled, deliberate work environment, and you value security. And if you're low in it, that means you prefer a flexible, dynamic, changeable environment. You value freedom of expression. And for the compliant, if you're high, you like things that are done the right way and say rules are there to be made or followed. And if you're low, you don't like systems and procedures. You like to work independently of those. And your thoughts is rules are to be bent or to be broken. So a typical profile, you can see on this example here, when you do your profile, you're out of 100% for each of these 4 areas. So for this profile here, we would say they're a high I. are over 90% they're probably in the I, they're lowest in the S, higher over 50% for the C, and just under 50% for the D. So that's that profile, but that person will be called a high I. So whatever you're highest in, that's what it's normally you're a high D, a high I, a high S, or a high C. Now and then you can have two very close together for your highest, and sometimes we'll call that person a high SC or a high DI, or whatever it might be. So when you do your profile, you'll get a report, and it'll show you two graphs. One is your natural or primary or basic style and reflects the real person, and that doesn't change. So this graph here, we can see the primary style, and then you also get what's called your adapted or adjusted to your work environment style. And this reflects the behavior that you change to meet the demands of your work situation. Now for some people, both of those graphs will be very similar. Generally they don't change a lot. There's a bit of a variation. So we can see for this person here, this is a real person. Their D is 39% and their D here is 32%. So not a lot of change. This one's I is 45 to 33, so there's a bit of a change there. There's certainly a change in the S. They've gone from 55 in their primary style and they've adapted. So they may be in a work environment where they have to be very steady and not make mistakes, so they're always thinking and being very steady in what they do. And this one here, they were 80% in the C and they've adapted to 53. So perhaps they like systems and procedures, but in their work, perhaps there's not a lot of those systems or procedures, or they have to really get things moving, so that they've got to be careful not to be too slow and follow all the rules and procedures. So we all do adapt. We do this naturally. You're probably using this now or doing this now. Now hopefully you can understand it a little bit better. So we do adapt, and successful people adapt. So you'll find that when you're dealing with someone and they've got a different style to you, you need to adapt to their style. So hopefully you may have done an online profile already and looked at your profile. If not, you can ask those two questions that we asked at the start. Are you outgoing or reserved? Are you task-focused or people-focused? And that can give you a good indication of your DISC profile. But also from the words that we've used in some of the things we've put on the screen so far should give you a good indication of what your DISC profile is. So there's many online systems you can use to get your profile. There's a manual system that I'll come forward to you. But it's very important to understand your DISC profile and what it is, and then be able to read other people. And you'll soon be able to pick that up, especially on the people who are high or low in a certain area. It's fairly easy to pick up what their DISC profile is, or what their main highest profile is. So we're going to go through now general characteristics for each of the D, the I, and then S and the C. So I won't read all these out, just put the video on hold and you can go through them. But you can see there's certain descriptors there of words that are characteristics of a high D. Now say if you're a low D, you'll find you're probably nearly opposite to these words. Value to the team. Everyone has different values that they bring. What the ideal environment that a high D likes to work with. Always there's some possible limitations. There's no right or wrong DISC profile. It's more understanding what your profile is, adapting, and then also reading other people and adapting to what their profile might be. So that every profile will have some limitations, and there's some stress tendencies, and our highest emotion. So for a high D, it's anger. So that's the D. This is the I. So again, these are some of the words. If you're high and I, these would be some of the words that would describe you fairly well. There may be one or two words that you don't feel is correct. That may be because your next highest, some of those words take over from that. So again, value to the team, the ideal environment that high I's like to work in, their limitations, stress tendency, and the emotion of a high I is optimism. So again, put that video on hold if you want to look at that more. Again, for the S, descriptors, words that really describe the value to the team, the environment they like to work within, some of their limitations, their tendencies under stress, and the emotion of the high S is non-emotional. And then finally the C, so descriptors, value to the team, ideal environment, possible limitations, and stress tendency. So really, if you had a team of 4 people, what do you think would be the ideal disc profiles of each of those 4? Just put the video on hold and think about that. So ideally, yes, having a high D, a high I, and high S and a high C would be good because they all bring different strengths to the team, and other people's weaknesses would be made up by the strength of those other people. So here's an exercise. I want you to put the video on hold. How would each profile go swimming? The D, the I, the S, and the C. So put the video on hold and just think about that and write out your answers. So a D, of course, very direct, decisive, they may jump straight in. An I would want to gather other people around and make a bit of a party or a show of it. An S would be very steady, they would think about it, they'd plan it, and then make the decision to get in. A C might want to know, well, what's the water temperature, is the chemicals in the water. They would really plan it out and think about it and know what time that they're going to go for a swim. So can you see in life and even our careers, a disc personality does things in different ways. So another good example is this. It's Monday morning. People are rolling into quite a big office, and someone's around the water cooler and he's talking about the weekend and what he did and what he got up to, and he's laughing, carrying and talking. What disc profile do you think that person is? Yeah, probably a high I. Now the same person comes in, says good morning to the other people around in the office, and gets down, goes to his office, sits down and starts work. What profile might that person be? Yeah, probably a C. They're very compliant. They want to get in and start on their task and get their job done. So can you see that we face, all of us in different situations do different things because of our behaviour and our personality. And DISC helps us explain this very easily. So what DISC profile would be most likely for each of the following jobs or positions? We tend to go to a work role or a job that suits our behaviour and our personality. So if you're doing a role that doesn't really suit you, it's like putting a round peg in a square hole. It just doesn't fit, or we don't feel comfortable, or we don't last in that position. We've got to have a job or a role that really suits our DISC profile. So I'm going to put these up. Just put the video on hold and ask what DISC profile or highest DISC profile would really suit those positions there and issues that I've put there. Okay, an engineer would most likely be a high C, meaning they like systems, procedures, they've got plans and things that they've got to follow to do their job well. A leader would most likely be a high D. An accountant is normally also a high C. They're very task focused, and normally until you get to know them, they're quite reserved. I've coached a lot of accountants in my time and done DISC profiles. Generally, nearly all of them are high Cs. Only one, being a business owner, was high D, and his next highest was C. A salesperson, generally a salesperson will be a high I. They may have some D traits, but generally they need to be reasonably high in the I. An entrepreneur normally is a high D, but not always. And I'll show you some examples of famous people and what their DISC profiles are. A receptionist generally may be a high S. They've got to be very steady. They've got to do various jobs. They've still got to have some people focus, but generally a high S, and probably even some C, because they'll have tasks and procedures to follow. A radio announcer, perhaps a DJ that gets on in the morning and laughs around and carries on and interviews people and does silly things, again probably would be a high I. And a contestant on Big Brother, generally they would be a high I. They like to be out there in the profile, don't mind people seeing them. Generally a high S or a C probably would not go on Big Brother. And perhaps a high D would also be would be quite comfortable with being on something like Big Brother. So just pause again on the video. Where would you place a high D on an assembly or packaging line? Now the answer to that, you could say there could be two things. Some people would say they put them at the start because then things are going down the assembly line quite quickly. Or you may put them at the end and then they'd be urging people on to get things down to them. So there's probably two arguments there that you'd use. And the other question, what would be the the disc profile of someone like Donald Trump? So just put it on hold and answer that question. I think everyone would know that someone like a Donald Trump would be a very, very, very high D. Sometimes that's known as a double D. So can you see, normally you can sort of see what personality or behaviour people have by what job they're doing and if they're doing well at that job. Now, someone else may be doing in one of those roles, but generally, they'll find it a little bit harder. They've got to get out of their comfort zone. They've got to adapt more than they would normally, and people can only adapt so much. So William Marsden, the founder of the DISC system, said, people exhibit all 4 behavioural factors in varying degrees of intensity. So when you do a profile, you get these 2 reports, the primary and the adjusted, and as you can see, we're rated out of 100% for each of those 4. And there's the ratings, and there they are on the graph. So we have all the 4 behavioural factors, and of course we do adapt. So when it comes to selecting someone for a job role, it's very important to understand DISC and make sure the role suits their personality and their behaviour. So most businesses should benchmark each position in their business and identify what would be the most suitable DISC profile for that position. And then when you're recruiting someone, you get them to do the DISC profile, and then you're able to match to see if they're reasonably similar to the benchmark DISC profile that you've already done. I coached quite a large organisation in the hotel industry, and once they understood this, they benchmarked all their positions in the business, and then when they were recruiting people, they got them to do the DISC profile and matched them up, and they could see if they didn't match up, they weren't going to be suitable for that role. So it's very, very important that DISC profiling is part of your selection, because there's a lot of things to take into account when you're selecting someone for a job role, such as behaviour, motivators, competencies and skills, their talents, their experience, their education and training, their IQ. But emotional intelligence, which is part of what DISC is just a very important part also, but not the only one. So we're just going to go through a few areas of business and life where DISC is important. So customer service. Now, if you're dealing with a dominant, high D type of person, to communicate effectively, you've got to be brief, cover high points, focus on results, let them win, and be very direct, and don't waste their time. That's why reading the other person is so important. For a high I, to communicate effectively, show enthusiasm, personal talk, socialise, build rapport, use gestures, even use touch. Communicating with a high S, you have a relaxed tone, a little bit slower pace, be logical, take time, ask questions, get them involved, really show that you care. And for a high C or a compliant, to communicate effectively, give information, stick to business, analyse, questions, clarify, give case studies, testimonials, listen carefully. They have high standards, so you've got to be able to take that into account. So if you want to read more of that, just put that on hold. Customer service is DISC is very important when you're in a sales situation. So this slide here shows how to deal with someone who is high in each of these areas and how you can help you get the sale by adapting to their DISC profile. So as you can see here, we've got the S, what you need to do, show that you can improve their efficiency. They procrastinate, so you've got to give them time. They're resistant to change, so sometimes you need to follow them up and give them case studies and testimonials and that sort of thing. The dominant, the decision makers, you've got to close them, get any objections out, and really ask for the sale directly. That's what they like. The high S, be firm but not pushy when closing them. Agree to when they will make a decision. So you get perhaps set a date in the future if they don't make a decision then. And the high I's are actually the easiest to sell or close to. They're decision makers. You just got to be their friend and talk to them, and they'll like you for that. And this is another slide that also talks about selling. The high D's or I's, some of the things that they like to do. The high S's and C's, what they like to do. And then specifically for each of the 4, specific D traits that can help you out in the sales situation, the I, the S, and the C. So just put the video on hold and have a think about them. And also, as part of your action from this, if you're in a sales situation, what can you learn from this and how can you adapt? I often use this as in businesses and write out specific things they can do depending on the DISC profile of the person they're dealing with that can help them win the sale. And DISC is very important in negotiating. So who do you think would be the best negotiator out of a D, an I, an S, and a C? Just put the video on hold. Yeah, mainly probably a high D would be, because they like to screw people down. They're direct, they'll get on, they don't mind walking out, perhaps if they don't get what they want. So a high D, so it can be very good in negotiating. DISC is very important in leadership and management because, one, the leader and manager needs to understand their profile and how they manage people, but they also need to read and manage the personality profiles of the people that are under them, the team members that are under them. So it's about inspiring people to work well requires you to understand what makes them tick. So to be able to understand their DISC profile, why they do things in certain ways, will help you become a better manager and leader. And of course, if you're a better manager and leader, you're going to get more productive. Your team will be more productive. They'll get on better, and your business or team will be so much more successful. So DISC also applies to sport. I attended a conference once where Lee Matthews, the former coach of the Brisbane Lions, who won 3 premierships in a row, they used DISC. And they profiled all of their footballing staff and team members and players, and that the coaches had to understand that each person was managed in a different way. Now, DISC sometimes has different names. There's where it's animals, where it's birds. So for animals, I think the tiger is the high D. For the birds, I think the owl is the high C. So there is different variations and names that is used for DISC, but it all comes back to the same philosophy. DISC in personal relationships is very important. You know, you'll find if you get 2 high Ds together, you get conflict, and there may be divorce. So, or 2 high perhaps Cs together, no one's making decisions. So it's very important in personal relationships to understand the personality of your partner or family or children and be able to adapt. So it's just as important as business or career. So here's another exercise. You receive a letter or an email. What is the DISC profile of the writer in these 4 situations? So put your video on hold and just answer that. So the first one, short and concise. That would be a high D. Talkative, enthusiastic and happy. That would be a high I. Friendly and courteous, high S. And very detailed, of course, would be a high C. So can you see you can start to pick up the personality or behaviour or DISC profile of someone by what they say, the way they say it, and how they act, and their personality and behaviour. So here's just a slide which shows you some of the DISC profiles of very famous people. So as you can see, Donald Trump there, very high D. Now, as I've already said, there's no right or wrong personality. So as you can see, 2 of the most wealthy people in the world here are down as C's, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. So there's no right or wrong personality. It's understanding your own, adapting sometimes in situations, reading other people, and being able to use it. But you can be too high or too low, and that can be a disadvantage or a weakness, but it's understanding it and then adapting. So in your business and life, what is the best profile? In a career or a job, there is a most suitable profile. But if you haven't got that, you can adapt. So what do you need to work on? What's missing perhaps in your business or in your personal life? How can you use this to improve the communication and harmony in your team? So DISC can be used to your advantage if you understand it and use it. So DISC is just another step in what's called emotional intelligence, which is about reading people, understanding people, knowing your own personality and being able to adapt to that. So in life, there's something called the golden rule. You like to be treated you like other people to treat you as you like to be treated. But the DISC Platinum rule is treat others the way that they want to be treated. Then you can get on with them better. If it's a sales situation, you're more likely to communicate better and get the sale or whatever it might be. So in summary, the more you understand your communication style, the more you understand how your communication impacts on others and how you need to adapt your communication to others. So learning DISC helps us communicate more effectively to more people in a better way, which will lead to more success. So there's lots of further reading. I've got numerous documents I can email to you if you want those. Of course, there's numerous stuff on the web and books and articles on this. So do a quick review. You can go back over this video, make notes. What will you action from this? What do you need to do? Have you got your profile done? Have you read your profile and understood it? Are you starting to read people? How can you use this in sales or customer service or personal relationships? Write out some actions that you can do. And if you've got any questions, please contact me. Thank you for watching this. Hope you've got good benefit from it, and use DISC to your advantage. It's a great life tool. Thank you.